And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Today we're taking a look at Batman Arkham City Escape, the board game. This is a game from Cryptozoic Games based on the video game of the same name, Batman Arkham City Escape, which has really gotten a lot of critical buzz in a good way. I wasn't really sure what to think about this. It looked cool, it looked neat, but it was Cryptozoic, and Cryptozoic has kind of... To me, there's been a lot of disassociation between their themes and their games, or I thought their games haven't been that good, but it looked cool enough to certainly try out. And this box makes it look like a mega game of wonder. Let's look. Here's the board, and really there's another side to the board, which is essentially the same thing, but the cards are in different places. There's going to be some setup cards that are placed on the board. Some of these cards, half of them are for Batman, the other half are for the villain, but you're not even sure which cards they are because you don't use all the setup cards each game. Then there's a special ally deck for Batman. There's a special gargoyle cards for Batman. Batman also has a choice to pick between 8 different cards for his utility belt. He'll place those 4 cards on a gigantic utility belt board, and they're face down until he decides to use them. Then there's 2 decks of cards, a villain deck for the bad guy and combat cards for Batman. Both players are going to draw cards from their deck, and then the villain player goes first. On the villain's player turn, he's going to roll 4 dice. These dice show bat symbols on them and Arkham City. The number of Arkham City icons that the villain rolls is how many actions he has. So you can have no actions, or you can have up to 4 actions. Usually you'll end up with 1 or 2, as I found out. Now, what can you do for your actions? Most of the cards in a player's hand are going to be bad guys from Batman's gallery of villains. Like, for example, here's Killer Croc. Here's Jervis Tetch. Then there's just lunatics and henchmen. Those are kind of special guys. And then there's different action cards that you can play. So with your actions, one of the actions is you can place up to 5 villains face down on the end of this board down here. And what these villains are trying to do is they're trying to run all the way across here, across this escape route. You can only do that once per turn, but it only takes 1 action to place down up to 5. Another action is you can move each of your face down villains 1 space. If a villain is face up for any reason, you can spend an action to move him 2 spaces. You can do that one as many times as you want, but it can't be with the same guy. So they'll be moving around board. When they move into a setup card, they will reveal the setup card. Now, some setup cards are good for the villains. Like this one here lets you roll an extra die when rolling for actions. Other cards are going to be good for Batman. This is a gargoyle. And why are gargoyles good? Because on Batman's turn, he can move 1 space on his turn for his action, or he can move from 1 sewer spot to another sewer spot, or he can use his grappling hook and go up to 2 spaces away to a gargoyle. And if there's multiple gargoyles on the board, and there's ways for him to put more of those out, then he'll be able to go from one to the other as he moves around. If Batman moves into a villain, or a villain moves into Batman, both players may decide to do that, Batman must fight the villain. To do that, Batman's going to play combat cards from his hand. Now, he has a limit of how many he can play, but it's not it's a pretty big limit. I think he can play up to 8 dice that he can play. But each card that he plays gives him a certain number of dice and perhaps extra special abilities when he plays those dice. Batman will roll those dice, and he's trying to get the Batarang symbol. If he gets enough to beat the bad guy, then he'll stick the bad guy into his pile. For example, he needs 2 to get the henchman. If he does, he'll put the henchmen in his pile who are worth 1 point. If he does not, let's say he's fighting Killer Croc, he needs 5, and he does not get 5, it would be cool if he did because it would be worth 3 points, then we go to whatever the retaliation says on the card. For example, here it says choose and destroy 1 Batman card on or adjacent to Killer Croc's space. So if Batman fights Killer Croc and fails, Killer Croc's going to destroy 1. I should go here real quickly and show you some of the different villains in the games. We have the Penguin, and there's also these special villain-free actions that they can play on their turn that don't count as one of your actions. You can simply play them. You can boost your villains. There's Mr. Freeze, not Schwarzenegger, Poison Ivy, Ra's al Ghul, Black Mask, the Riddler, Hush, Two-Face, Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Hugo Strange, Calendar Man, and the Joker is in the game. Don't worry about that. And as you're playing these games, there's also some villains that will show up perhaps on a setup card. But there's also good cards that will show up on a setup card for Batman. Like here, he can always reroll 1 combat die, but the villain player can put a henchman or lunatics here to take out the bat symbol. Now, if I manage to get one of my guys across the line down here and as the villain, then I will score those points. First person to 7 points is the winner. So the villain is trying to sneak his guys down. He might use some to fight Batman just to wear Batman out because Batman, doesn't have tons of combat cards. He'll be able to draw them as time goes by. But Batman does have this utility belt to fight back. When he uses an item on his utility belt, he'll turn it over, and the number at the top here shows how many charges that belt has. So he'll be able to put 3 here on top of this. And here, flip down each face-down card adjacent to Batman face up, so he can find out the cards that are face-down next to him. Or here, a glide kick. He can fly all the way across the board. This one only has 1 charge, but he can jump up against a wall and knock a villain down. Or here we have the bat claw. So knowing which of these targets which of these equipment to take will help out a lot. And he only has a certain amount of charges, but there's lots of ways and cards, especially when Batman beats villains, he gets to roll a special bonus die, which will then put out a gargoyle, or recharge some of his bat cards, which is half of this. Or draw 2 cards, or pull out an ally card on the board. Now, ally cards, when they show up on the board, and some of these setup cards might be ally cards too, like here's Commissioner Gordon. An ally card will give Batman a special ability. For example, at the start of Batman's turn, he draws a combat card. Fantastic. But you'll notice Commissioner Gordon's 2 points. If I'm a bad guy, and let's say I get Bane in the Commissioner Gordon spot, I can only move 1 now, but if I get across the line, I'll score for Bane and for Commissioner Gordon, and while I'm holding him hostage, Batman doesn't get that special ability. So there's all sorts of allies, undercover cops, doctors, Vicky Vale, Alfred Pennyworth, and Jack Ryder. Different people who are involved in Batman's life, and Catwoman and Robin are in the game too. So that's essentially the game. The game doesn't take very long. Batman's trying to go around and beat as many villains as he can, and the villains are trying to run across the line. This is definitely not a mega game of wonder. Instead, it's a good 2-player game. And the only reason I'm not keeping it and adding it to my collection is simply because I can't justify putting this box on the shelf. It's just too big. This could have easily come in a box 1/2 to 1/3 the size. Yeah, the board is big and cool, but they could have folded it more, made it even just a bit smaller, and I think the game would have worked so well. My other negative about the game is I understand that 3D artwork is part of the game and they want to bring that into this board game. I think 3D artwork looks really good, while this artwork specifically looked really good on the video game screen on the TV. When it's flat, two-dimensional, not as good. I would have actually preferred to see the drawings from the comics, but that's not that big of a deal. For the game itself, I really enjoy how this game works in the sense that it's just very light and fun, but it seems to offer both people choices. Batman, of course, is going to pick his 4-piece equipment at the beginning of the game. He has to decide, is he going to really try to fight these big, powerful guys and get their points, or is he going to go around and get a bunch of little guys? If he wastes his cards on all the little guys, when the big ones come, they might deliberately fight him because they know he can't fight back, and then he will suffer the retaliation. And meanwhile, who's going to go around and discover the setup cards? Batman wants to set up a system of gargoyles as quickly as he can so he can run around. The bad guy has the ability to put down characters and keep them face down as long as he possibly can. They move slowly, but at the same time, he might sneak a couple cool ones past Batman. Now, let's not make this out to be a game of rocket science. It's not a big, all these huge strategic decisions, but as a fast, fun, light 2-player game, I thought it was very good and very thematic. I think that the big bad villains, the Joker and Bane and the Riddler and Two-Face, felt like big bad villains, while henchmen and lunatics felt just like that, henchmen, and Batman goes around and beats them up. The rolling of the dice for actions can be frustrating to the bad guys, but it gives them that chaotic nature. You never know how many actions you're going to have on a particular turn, while Batman always has the same amount of things that he can do each turn. He's going to move a few things, he's going to maybe jump from one spot, and he's going to fight. Both sides have variety. Maybe Batman has a little bit more of the options that he can do, but I think the villain has a cool hand of cards, and knowing the best time to play them I'm very impressed with this game. It's pretty cool. Like I said, the only reason I'm not hanging on to it is because the box size is just really too big. But it is a good one that I would recommend. I think that it says 15 plus on it. It could easily be played 10, 11, or 12 age limit. A very simple game to get into, and certainly brings forth the theme. Good job, Cryptozoic, on this game.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.